On to this abbreviated week of the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. I'm D-Squared, Rudy Armand. We had a nice show yesterday, interesting one. We had a conversation with Steve Wiltfong, the Director of Recruiting, the National Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports. We focused on Ohio State and the huge recruiting weekend, the 60-plus kids they had visiting for that top 5 matchup with Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's debut coming back to his alma mater, Ohio State, and of course the Buckeyes coming back from a 10-7 halftime deficit to win 21-10. And I mean, it was a cavalcade of stars. LeBron James and his son Bronny there. I believe Bronny was officially visiting the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's of course a program that is dear to LeBron's heart. He's stated the fact that if he had played collegiate athletics, it would have been at Ohio State. He was actually a great receiver at St. Vincent St. Mary in Akron. Also, he, of course, was the best basketball player in the country and has gone on to such a unbelievable career in professional basketball. But, Ohio State had a lot of star power there. Mateo Uiagalelei, of course, the brother of DJ Uiagalelei, and Mateo will actually be in Tuscaloosa for an official visit for the Texas A&M game. Damon Wilson, a great 5-star talent, edge player from Florida, visited Ohio State officially, as did Keon Keeley. Keon Keeley, of course, another Floridian from Tampa, Florida, and Berkeley Prep, and a guy that I know Alabama is very, very interested in. And Damon Wilson already visited Alabama in June officially. Keon Keeley has not. He was there a couple of times, and especially for the Champions Cookout in late July. But he will officially visit Alabama on the weekend of the Texas A&M game, and I think Alabama still feels like they're in very strong position with Keon Keeley. And we're going to talk some Alabama recruiting today with Hank South, the recruiting reporter for BamaOnline.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He is going to be slated to join us in a few minutes, and so he does a great job tracking Alabama recruiting in both big-time major sports, football and basketball, and we'll talk to Hank, about what he's hearing in Alabama recruiting. He does an outstanding job, so that should be a great conversation. He's been featured many times on our sister station on ESPN 97.7 The Zone and on Talking Ball, and it'll be good to catch up with Hank. He's going to give us some time this morning, and we truly appreciate that. And we're going to continue to, track Alabama recruiting closely. As we've stated, they are number one in all of the major polls, including 24/7 Sports Composite. Alabama number one, in the country in recruiting. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can hold on to it. Ohio State right now is 6th, but, they had a lot of star power in Columbus on Saturday and through the weekend for official visits and unofficial visits. And so Ohio State and Ryan Day still got some cards to play. NIL is still going to be big down the stretch because right now Texas A&M, the reigning recruiting national champion, so to speak, is not in the top 25 in many cases. They are going to make some moves late, probably with some NIL situations. So they're going to be a program to monitor and watch. They're still recruiting Tony Mitchell, the 5-star defensive back from Thompson High School, who was in town in Tuscaloosa on an unofficial visit this past weekend. Says he's solid to the Crimson Tide, but certainly we're going to have to see how that continues going forward. And we're going to continue to monitor Auburn. They had a good recruiting weekend. Didn't get any commitments, but certainly had James Smith and Quay Russaw on campus for their opener, the 42-16 win against the Mercer Bears, which was delayed by weather. And weather's playing a huge part in high school football this week around our state. There's a lot of inclement weather coming in by the end of the week, and Friday is looking like it's going to be dicey weather-wise, and a lot of games are being moved to Thursday. We just honored our ESPN 97.7 The Zone Team of the Week, and that team is the Decatur Red Raiders. Our great friends at Bryant Bank are going to donate $500 to that program. And it's very likely around noon today that game with Coleman at Coleman against Oscar Glasscock and the Coleman Bearcats, who come in with a 2-1 record, Decatur 3-0 for the first time since 2010. And that game will likely be moved to Thursday. Because of this weather, and so Decatur will likely end up traveling over to Coleman, trying to stay undefeated. And this was a Bearcat team that beat the Red Raiders 17-14 last year at Decatur. So it was a close football game, no doubt about it. And now the Red Raiders playing against one of their traditional opponents in 6A Region 7. Going to be traveling to Coleman to try to stay undefeated, coming off of a huge win against Athens, 26-14, to become the team of the week last week. And before that, their first win ever on the campus of Austin High School and their new stadium and their new campus, 28-14. The Red Raiders beat the Austin Black Bears. So we're going to continue to monitor the weather situation. We are, of course, the home of Randolph Raider, the Randolph Raiders and Coach David Lloyd. They are 2-1, trying to go to 3-1 in 4A Region 8, and they will be hosting the North Jackson Chiefs and Joe Hollis. That game is still slated for Friday. We'll continue to keep you updated and see if it moves. It could easily move to Thursday, more than likely. Right as of right now on their calendar, no movement from the Randolph administration. But if there is some, we'll certainly let you know. And there's always the possibility that our broadcast will happen on Thursday. So we will continue to monitor those weather situations, and it looks like the weather is going to be throughout the entire state dicey, because we've seen games move to Thursday in Mobile, moved there in Birmingham, and now in Coleman very likely, and moving into North Alabama. Priceville and DAR has already moved to Thursday. So we will continue to monitor those situations and to certainly let you know about that. And again, download the app, our ESPN 97.7 The Zone app at Google or the Apple Store, and this Blitz Sports Radio, which we are in our, just infancy with our show. We've done an outstanding job here building this Recruiting Blitz, and it's certainly something we're very excited about. We've been able to, this is, I believe, our 5th week of the show. We're very excited to continue to build it. We've had an outstanding cavalcade of guests, no doubt about that. And actually, now that I think about it, let me correct myself. This is week 6. We are getting ready just very soon in the next couple of days to wrap up week 6 of the Recruiting Blitz, brought to you by Blitz Sports Radio. And certainly, recruiting is a passion of mine. It always has been, and we look forward to our conversation in a few minutes with Hank South to talk Alabama. And we're always going to focus on the SEC mostly on this show, and especially Alabama and Auburn with the in-state angles. But we're also going to monitor the smaller schools, such as our great friend John Summerall, who'd made his debut at Troy on the road at Ole Miss. Very competitive game. They lost 28-10. I thought they competed well. Certainly, UAB was able to subdue Alabama A&M in their opener this past week, and we know Bill Clark has stepped away, but Brian Vincent still, patrolling that program, and they're a very proud program, UAB, and has done very, very well in Conference USA. And Jacksonville State, they had gotten a big win over Stephen F. Austin a couple of weeks ago. We're going to continue to follow Rich Rod and what he can do at Jack State, and see if he can make them very competitive as they make their transition. They're going to be in the Atlantic Sun with UNA this year, and then go to Conference USA. But speaking of UNA, heartbreaker for them on the road on Thursday against Indiana State in Terre Haute, Indiana. Looked like they were just a few yards away from a walk-off win and maybe winning the game 20-17, but they end up with a bad snap over the quarterback's head, which leads to a field goal being blocked. But that field goal was even waved off via penalty, and the Hail Mary was not answered, and UNA ends up dropping the game 17-14 at Indiana State, and they're going to have to bounce back. They struggled on offense, but so, of course, Chris Willis, a great friend of ESPN 97.7 The Zone and Blitz Sports Radio, and we hope that the UNA can bounce back. But certainly a heartbreaker on the road for them, which would have been kind of a signature win now that they are officially eligible to compete in FCS and compete in the Atlantic Sun Conference. and looking forward to trying to reach and become an FCS playoff program. There was so much success for Bobby Wallace in his 2 tenures. Mark Hudspeth as well at UNA. They were a power in the playoffs and won 3 straight national titles in the 90s under the outstanding leadership of Coach Bobby Wallace. And so we are going to monitor that very closely and see how UNA can, how they do. And this is, been a long, arduous process, several years for Chris Willis not being eligible, being in the Big South, not being able to contend for a playoff berth or a championship. Now they can at UNA, and so we're certainly going to track North Alabama as well. They signed Caden Young last year from the Madison Academy Mustangs. He was a 4-year stalwart along that offensive line, so hopefully he's going to have a great career in the purple of UNA. And so, we're definitely going to follow his career. But we're going to talk to Hank South in just a few minutes because Alabama is off to a really nice start, in this recruiting class. And we're going to talk some basketball. I briefly touched on it yesterday with Davin Cosby from the state of Virginia, St. Benedictine, but now he's moved over to Word of God in Raleigh, North Carolina, a great prep school where he thinks he's going to face more high-level competition. Where does Alabama stand with Davin? What's the latest buzz? What does Hank think of R.J. Johnson and that commitment? And, of course, Sam Walters. Sam Walters continuing to impress. He's certainly going to have to gain weight and build up his body, but he's someone from the state of Florida who's a 6'9", stretch 4, who's really skilled and really impressed Doug Gottlieb. I know the other day at a showcase that he competed in, I believe, in Vegas, and he averaged about 17.5 points per game. I think once he's developed by Nate Oates and staff, he's got a chance to be a perfect fit for that program and the way they want to play 4 and 5 out and spread the floor, and your bigs being able to step out and shoot and also dribble and pass. And certainly Sam Walters can do that. And we'll talk to Hank South about that young man and what his thoughts are on him, and especially football recruiting, because Alabama's got 21 commitments, as we've said. They really don't have that many spots left. I still say it's 28 or 29. They've got, I think, their board whittled down to just a handful of positions where they want to take a young man and where they would, if they could find the right offensive tackle, they would take a 6th offensive lineman. But otherwise, I don't think they're going to take another OL. I think they like where their class is under Eric Wolford. Samson Okanola, a kid from Massachusetts who's thought to be a heavy Miami lane. He could still end up, at Alabama. I think they would definitely take someone like him, but it would take a prospect of that stature to gain a spot in the offensive line class. I still think it's more adding, 4 defensive linemen for Alabama, adding a corner, and now they may have to pivot because of the developments with Cormani McClain. Alabama was thought at one time to be leading for Cormani. It sounds like Billy Napier and Florida are, especially with Cormani opting to go to that Florida-Utah game over the weekend that saw the Gators whip Utah and get that huge win. So Alabama may have to go in a different direction at corner, and we'll see if that happens, because you could argue they don't have a true corner in the class, because I think Tony Mitchell is more of a nickel and safety for Alabama than he is a corner. And with the likelihood of Kyrie Jackson moving on to the NFL and Eli Ricks still could, Alabama needing to add some depth at corner, though they have a guy like Earl Little who had a shoulder injury that he had in high school that he had to get fixed at Alabama, and we'll see if Earl becomes a factor this time for the Crimson Tide as well. But we're going to talk to Hank about what he's hearing in recruiting, what the situation is with Alabama going into this game at Texas with the Jalen Hale from Longview. There's a lot of buzz coming out of the official visit this past weekend, that Jalen might be leaning to the University of Alabama following that visit. He's someone that's kind of fits, what the Alabama's MO. He's not a possession receiver because he can run a 10-5, but he's long, he's athletic. He's similar to a Devontae Smith, in his skill set. They've got Cole Adams, more of a slot, quick player from the state of Oklahoma who committed early, and then a Malik Benson who is kind of a do-it-all kind of guy from the JUCO ranks. We'll talk to him about Justin Jefferson, who's off to a great start in junior college, and he's a guy that earned his offer at Alabama. And I think with the loss of Henry To'oTo'o and of course, Jalen Moody at the end of this year at inside linebacker, I think Justin Jefferson, Alabama staff believes can enroll early and potentially make an impact coming out of Pearl River Community College. So we'll talk to Hank about that. We'll even bring up a guy like Elijah Davis. His recruitment's kind of hard to track out of East Mississippi Community College, where Buddy Stevens is the coach. He's a big-time defensive lineman, but is Alabama wanting to take another junior college player? Where is the defensive line board kind of lining up for the Crimson Tide? Because I think when you look at it, Alabama, that's we talked about in this recruiting cycle, a big part of it would be what defensive linemen can they line up. Well, so far they had two really solid guys who were coming off standout performances this past Friday, and that's Hunter Osborne of Hewitt-Trussville High School playing for Josh Floyd, and also Edric Hill, and we had Leon Douglas, his coach from North Kansas City High School, on to talk about Edric Hill. He's off to a very strong start, as I believe they're 2-0, and he's had, I think, already 3.5 sacks in 2 games. A very strong start for Edric Hill as he looks to continue to up his profile in recruiting and become a potential 5-star level guy who, I think he's a consensus 4-star, but Alabama really liked him at camp. Thinks he's a 6'3", 290-pounder who could ultimately be compared to a Fedarian Mathis. So he's someone that I think's kind of flown under the radar but earned his offer from Alabama, like a Kobe Prentice a year ago. Kobe, his first game, what a performance from the Calera native. 5 catches for 60 yards, did have 1 drop. But it was, the only glaring mistake by the young man in the game. His first in an Alabama uniform. He was targeted first, much like he was in the 2 scrimmages beforehand, we heard. He got off to a quick start in both those scrimmages. He got off to a quick start in the game with Bryce Young and is already earning the trust of, the best quarterback, I think, in college football and the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. But speaking of Bryce Young, speaking of recruiting, speaking of the University of Alabama, we're going to talk to Hank South, and we're going to go on a break here on the Recruiting Blitz by D Squared, with D Squared on Blitz Sports Radio. When we come back, the recruiting reporter for BamaOnline.com, part of 24/7 Sports, Hank South, is going to join us to talk some Crimson Tide. Stay with us on Blitz Sports Radio. I'm D Squared, Rudy Armand. We're going to talk some more Bama recruiting next.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time, or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding the solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
This is Wes Neighbors with Philip with Eagle Insulation, and we have an announcement to make.
Yes, Wes, we are now Eagle Masonry and Insulation. Still a place to call for your insulation needs, but now we offer masonry services.
What kind of masonry projects can you handle?
Wes, no job is too big, no job is too small. We can do renovations, new construction, outdoor fireplaces, fire pits, brick landscape borders.
Well, when you came out to my house, you did both the insulation and masonry at the same time. You guys did rock for me, you did brick for me, and you insulated my house. That's usually done at the same time that you're building a house.
Absolutely. It really capitalizes on 2 services you need at the same time, and you can get one company to handle both of those.
Philip with Eagle Insulation will come out, do your installation. He'll do your masonry. They do a great job. They guarantee your work. Check out more online at insulatedwitheagle.com and schedule your free examination today. 256-755-1556.
Thanks, Wes.
Here's Bobby White from Woody Anderson Ford on their service department.
President's Award winner 2 years in a row. That's only given to the top 10% of Ford dealers in customer satisfaction. So we're very proud of the service department. And our body shop. If you happen to get into an accident, which not a lot of people just want to go down and see a body shop, but if you get into an accident, award-winning body shop. We have state-of-the-art paint booths back there. They're waterborne paints that we use, friendly for the environment. We've got our production system, the way things are in and out. We have the fastest cycle rate in town of getting your vehicle in, getting your vehicle out, and assured that it's fixed right. We take pictures before it's wrecked, and not only after, but we take it as we're putting the parts on. All done to above industry standards. So I'm proud of our body shop too. Don't forget our parts department. So you don't have to need parts, performance parts, or just parts if you're a weekend mechanic.
Woody Anderson Ford, located at the corner of Jordan and Sparkman, as well as Hughes Road and Madison. You can also check out the great deals at WoodyAndersonFord.com.
TOC Sports has been there for you. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what does that mean? It means for more than 20 years, Alabama's largest orthopedic group has been there providing coverage and care to more schools and student athletes in the Tennessee Valley than any other group. It means whether you are the star football player, the all-region volleyball ace, or someone who hurt their knee in a weekend pickup basketball game, TOC Sports physicians are proud to have the opportunity to care for all your orthopedic needs. It means for parents, coaches, athletes, desk jockeys, or even weekend warriors, TOC Sports physicians continue to meet and exceed the orthopedic and sports medicine needs of our community. But most importantly, during these challenging times, we're here for you now and will continue to be here. So as long as there are players on the field, games to be played, and contests to be won, the orthopedic specialists from TOC Sports will be ready to help. We don't know what the future holds, but you can count on the TOC Sports team to stay committed to you so you can stay in the game. Call 256-539-2728 today and ask to see a TOC Sports physician. Check them out online, also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio with D Squared. I'm Drew DeArmond, and we're about to talk some Alabama football recruiting with our next guest. He does a great job for Bama Online 24/7, part of 24/7 Sports, tracking the Crimson Tide, the number one class in the country, football-wise, basketball-wise, coming off maybe their best recruiting year in school history, a top 3 national class. They have 2 commitments in the 2023 cycle in Sam Walters, who we already talked about, and R.J. Johnson, and we'll talk some hoops recruiting with Davin Cosby coming off an official visit this past weekend to Tuscaloosa as well. He tracks it all, and he does a great job, and Hank South has been kind enough to join us for a few quick minutes here on the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline for the Recruiting Blitz. Hank, it's great to have you back in Huntsville. You're with Drew DeArmond. How are you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning, Drew. I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for taking some time. You have a job that I've done it. It's no rest for the weary. You're always having to track visits, always having to track social media, and of course football this time of year is huge. Basketball becoming big under Nate Oates, but a big official visit this past weekend for Alabama. Jalen Hale from Longview, Texas, and we kind of talked in the previous segment for our listeners that Alabama's got 2 good receivers committed in this class, Cole Adams, a slot guy, and then Malik Benson from Hutchinson Community College, but looking to maybe add one final piece to that recruiting puzzle, wide receiver wise, and it looks like Jalen Hill is a guy they're really starting to hone in on.
Yeah, he's been kind of, I guess, considered one of the top remaining 2 targets at the wide receiver position. Hale and then Jaron Hamilton, the receiver from Florida. But Jalen Hale's kind of the one we're watching closest right now, mainly because, for several reasons, but he's set to announce a decision on September 21st. So he's 2 weeks away from announcing his commitment. Coming off an Alabama visit, it was his 3rd trip this year. He took an unofficial in March, and then he came back for the Champions Cookout. And ever since that Champions Cookout visit, it really seems like Bama's kind of turned it up a notch in his recruitment, and and really kind of had the buzz, in its favor for Jalen Hale. And I say that with, 2 weeks to go till the decision. I think there's still a lot of recruiting to be done. Bama this past weekend, he'll be in Austin this weekend for an official visit to Texas, so he'll see Bama play 2 weekends in a row. And then he had a top three, or he has a top three of
right.
Bama, Georgia, and Texas, but he's going to actually officially visit Texas A&M as well. Haynes King, the quarterback at A&M, obviously played at his high school, so there's that connection there. A&M's been recruiting him really hard as well, so he'll take that last official visit to A&M prior to that September 21st decision date. So, 2 big visits remaining. Obviously, that in-state pressure is going to ramp up. They're going to try to keep him home. I think Bama has done a really good job of pitching everything to him. Obviously he sees for himself in person 2 true freshman wide receivers in Kobe Prentice and Isaiah Bond contribute on Saturday night against Utah State. He's seen the wide receiver production overall over the course of the last handful of years in Alabama. So I think Jalen Hale likes Alabama a lot. I think they've done a really good job recruiting him, and I think Bama could be kind of the trending team right now, but it'll be interesting to see how these next couple weeks go.
It does, but I also think when you go back and look at the last few cycles, that Alabama had, Jace McClellan being one of them, and last year flipping Jamarian Miller, they've won some key battles in Texas in recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's after I guess Bo Davis and Billy Napier and Carl Scott, left the staff over the course of the last few years. People thought Texas recruiting would take a hit, Bama's ability to recruit the state of Texas would take maybe a little bit of a hit, and it really hasn't. I think if anything, it's really only turned up. We've seen, like you just mentioned, Jace McClellan, JoJo Earl. We saw Drew Sanders. We saw Drew Sanders a couple classes ago. The Brockermeyer brothers. And so on. So, with the combination of guys, they have Coleman Hutzler on the staff now. He's very familiar. He coached in Texas, so, he's very familiar with the landscape in Texas. Travaris Robinson, Holman Wiggins. They've got a lot of pieces on the staff that can recruit the state of Texas well, and it looks like they could again with Jalen Hale coming up with his decision. We'll see Jordan Renaud, the defensive lineman, make a decision in a couple weeks as well. So it doesn't look like it's really slowed down too much in the state. And, they're going to have a prime opportunity this weekend to kind of have all these Texas recruits see them play in Austin. So that could be definitely a recruiting opportunity in itself, even though it's an away game.
Well, and what are your thoughts on Jordan Renaud, Tyler Legacy? Speaking of Jamarian Miller, that's his former teammate. He's another guy that's going to make his, decision known in September. And it seems to be a 2-horse race now between Alabama and Oklahoma for Jordan Renaud.
Yeah, this is one I still like where Bama sits for him. And, there's confidence, I feel like, on both, or there's obviously the confidence on both sides. We've seen some crystal ball predictions go in favor of Oklahoma from guys in the state of Oklahoma. But Bama, has been kind of the unwritten favorite, I feel like, or unsaid favorite, since April. He's taken a few visits. He took his official visit in June, and the interesting thing here is he's going to officially visit Oklahoma this weekend. So the Sooners will get him on campus last prior to his decision on September 19th. But he says he still plans to unofficially visit Bama for a game at some point. So, we'll see how that plays into everything. Of note, Brent Venables, the head coach at Oklahoma now, kind of follows the Clemson model of recruiting,
right,
where if you commit, you shut down your recruitment, you don't take any more visits. So, if he does commit to Oklahoma and takes that Bama visit, that would be interesting to see kind of what happens there. But I still think Bama's in a good spot here. I think Freddie Roach has done a really good job. I think they've obviously, the need is a defensive line to close out this class, and I think Jordan Renaud recognizes that. So, we'll see what happens this weekend if Oklahoma swings things in their favor, and what happens following that. But Bama is expected to be on the sidelines this weekend or on Friday night for Jordan Renaud's game, and coincidentally, he's playing Jalen Hale's team. So
that's pretty cool.
Two guys.
Yeah, I think there might be some people online trying to watch a feed of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jalen Hale and playing against Jordan Renaud, Tyler Legacy taking on Longview, Texas, and definitely some Bama staff members likely to be on the road for that. And then, as you said, Hank, defensive line, a huge area of need in this class. They have Hunter Osborne and Edric Hill committed. Both of those guys coming off of strong Friday performances this past week. But Alabama wanting to add 3 or 4 more defensive linemen. Just kind of update us on where the defensive line board stands. You just updated Jordan Renaud. What about Keon Keeley? What are we hearing after this visit to Ohio State?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a spot, I think you could circle is where they're going to hit hardest ahead of early signing day, trying to close out this class. But Keon Keeley, obviously the edge target from Tampa, Florida. He obviously made headlines a couple weeks back when he decommitted from Notre Dame. Bama's had all the buzz for him, but he's kind of taken a step back and he's doing official visits. Was at Ohio State, like you said, last weekend. Maybe we'll go to Florida this weekend. I'm not sure if he does. It'll probably be an unofficial visit. I think Florida's trying everything they can to get him on campus after he officially visits Bama in October for the Texas A&M game, as is currently the plan. So obviously, he's going to probably be one of Florida's biggest, if not their biggest, remaining target outside of maybe Cormani McClain to close out this class. So they're going to go all out for him. But Bama has seemed to have the edge here. I think that's still the case, even coming off Ohio State. And that's saying something, I think, because, he's on the sideline with LeBron James and
we saw the
Joe
picture,
Burrow and all those guys. There was like Celeb Central for the Ohio State Notre Dame game last weekend, and no, I think Bama was the reason he ultimately backed off his commitment to Notre Dame, and I think that's still where he's leaning. I think he kind of just wants to make sure that's the right choice. I think we'll see a decision, prior to early signing day. I'm not sure how soon. He kind of gave a brief timeline outline, I guess, last weekend after his game. He said, it could really come at any time. I would imagine he wants to do it after these visits. We'll see. But I do think it's, probably more so Bama versus Ohio State right now. And I think you got to give the leg up to Bama because part of the reason, there's several reasons he decommitted, but part of the reason was also distance from home. And so, if you decommit from Notre Dame, then commit to Ohio State, and that's, part of the reason that doesn't make much sense. So I still think Bama has the edge for him. I think, Coleman Hutzler, Holman Wiggins, those guys have done a really good job recruiting him. And, I think we'll eventually, at this point, see him join the class.
Well, and then also a guy that's very intriguing. It looks like Keon Keeley will officially visit for the Texas A&M weekend, and I know you're going to put together that recruiting visit list, and you're already in the process of doing it, but a lot of that will play itself out over the next few weeks. But as far as a huge recruiting weekend for Alabama with a lot of star power, I was just saying this yesterday on the show, Hank, that weekend for Alabama could be very similar to what we saw at Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, you ask any college football fan of, games they're excited about. I think that when A&M visits Alabama in October, that's probably one of the top ones after all the off-season drama and obviously coming off Bama losing to A&M last season. So, yeah, and so far, every time we talk to kids about, when are they going to take their official visits that haven't already. I mean, Bama's already hosted 30-plus official visitors over the summer, but the kids that haven't, it's mainly been that weekend. Obviously the Iron Bowl is going to always be a big recruiting weekend, but in terms of official visits, and it's kind of been the one kids have been circling. Keon Keeley's expected. Cormani McClain is expected for that weekend. I know Kelby Collins, who's committed to Florida, is looking at that weekend for his official visit. There's going to be a handful of guys committed that are in town for that weekend that'll help recruiting. And so that's kind of that's going to be the biggest one so far. We'll see if any other weekend tops that. We've seen a few kids schedule. I know by Job, the Michigan State edge rusher commit. He's planning for the Vandy weekend for an official visit, and then Devin Hobbs is planning for the Mississippi State game. So a few guys that are not picking the A&M weekend, but no, that certainly looks to be the biggest one so far.
Where does Alabama stand with a guy like Devin Hobbs?
I think trending up. I feel like I said that about all these guys, but there's only so many targets, and Bama's really putting a focus on these defensive linemen. And I think since the summer, he got the offer earlier in the summer. He came back to the Champions Cookout. He's planning to officially visit, like I said, for the Mississippi State game, and he said he also wants to get down for another game if he can. So could be attending 2 games in Tuscaloosa this fall. He was all set to commit to a school on August 1st.
North Carolina was the heavy favorite, right?
Yeah. It looked like it was going to be North Carolina where he picked, and then he took that visit to Bama for the Champions Cookout and delayed that choice. So you got to think, that Bama had a role in that decision to kind of push things back. I think Bama's got the buzz right now, but again, he's a guy that Georgia's pushing for, Auburn's pushing for, Tennessee is pushing for, and so it's going to be a pretty heated battle for him. But I think Bama has kind of set itself apart a little bit, at least at this point. They were on. Freddie Roach saw him play last Friday. I think Josh Heupel went to his game last Friday as well, the Tennessee head coach. So definitely one of those recruitments that's going to be, one we're tracking closely this fall. And he's actually, it's kind of interesting. He has a little sister that's a top 2024 basketball recruit. And so he, I'm not sure how much that's going to factor in, but that could also play a role in kind of where he's looking as well. So, we'll see, but I think Bama's in a good spot for David Hobbs right now.
Is it safe to say, I know he certainly didn't commit to North Carolina, but that Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee are the top three for Hobbs?
I think so. He has. When I talked to him, I think a week and a half ago.
Right.
And he said he was going to put out an updated top schools list here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see if he changes things up. But I think those are kind of the three schools I'm watching closest. Auburn was in play early, but I think, like you said, Tennessee's really made an impression on him, and Georgia also is pressing too. So I think that could be a safe, unofficial top three to predict right now.
Well, I know you are on the boards at BamaOnline.com constantly, and if you had $1 for every time you were asked this question, you'd probably be a rich man. But I know they visited Auburn last weekend. In your mind, what's the latest with James Smith and Quay Russaw? And I think we all expect their process to play itself out in December.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of where I'm at. Every time we've written about him over the last 4 weeks, kind of been just you got to let this play out. There's going to be twists and turns. There's going to Auburn will probably have momentum at some point if they keep winning games. Georgia is probably going to have the buzz at some point, and Bama obviously is always going to be there. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes to early signing day, I think Bama. I would predict Bama, but it's nothing with great confidence. I think there's a long way to go. They're going to sign with the same school. That's what's expected. Mm-hmm. They take the same visits. They put out the same top six. So Bama's going to get them in for an official visit. Both of them probably will be the same weekend. I think as late as they can do that, the better. So if they can do that last weekend in December and kind of get the final word with them, that would probably be best. But as long as they get an official visit from them, I think that's important. And obviously, they're both very familiar with Alabama. They've been there plenty of times. So I got to pick Bama for them. If I was making a mock class, I'd put them both in it. But again, it's going to be something you kind of have to just buckle up for because it's going to be, similar with all these Montgomery kids. Curtis Perry last year
right.
was almost like, people thought he was going to go to Auburn in the end, and obviously he signed with Bama. You look back, guys like Henry Ruggs, Mac Wilson, Ben Davis, all those guys, not Ben Davis, but those guys, all the guys out of Montgomery, it's always kind of goes late, and there's always kind of some drama, but, in the end, it more often than not works out for Bama. So it'll be one of those recruitments those two recruitments we're tracking this fall closest.
Well, and speaking of one that could go the other way, I know in the summer there was a lot of positive buzz with Cormani McClain, the corner from Lakeland, Florida, arguably the number one corner in the country. He was at the Swamp for Florida and Utah. Probably will be back there. I wouldn't be surprised for UF hosting Kentucky this weekend. Florida seems to be gaining a lot of momentum. Alabama, I know, would like to at least add one more corner to this class. If Cormani McClain, if this continues and he signs with the Gators and stays in state, where do you anticipate Alabama pivoting?
Yeah, I think they'll obviously still recruit him, but Sharif Denson, who's actually committed to Florida, is a guy they've been turning up the heat on of late. So I think he's as Florida keeps winning and building momentum, he's probably going to become more and more solid. But he seems pretty firm with Florida, but he's also wearing Alabama gloves to his games, and he's another guy that he says he's likely going to officially visit Bama for that A&M game. So we'll see what happens with that, but. They could turn to a guy like Denson, Malik Muhammad, who's committed to Texas. He's a guy that Bama has loved throughout the process. He committed to Texas in the summertime. So, we'll see if they get him in on an official visit at some point. He's a guy that they'll still recruit. But beyond that, it'll be interesting to see. It might have to come down to flipping somebody. maybe circling back on somebody in the cycle. There's Damari Brown out of South Florida. They could eventually press for to add him. I know Clemson's recruiting him hard, so there's some options. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I would agree. I think Florida's kind of the team to beat for Kamani McClain right now. But he's also a guy that it's kind of what have you done for me lately in terms of where he visited last. That kind of seems to change momentum for him. So, if he does end up taking that official in October to Bama, we could also still see Bama swing things there for him throughout the fall.
And we talked about before you came on, Justin Jefferson. He's off to a great start for Pearl River Community College, but they would like to add a couple more linebackers. Quay Russaw would be one of them from Carver Montgomery. But where else might they be looking on the linebacker board? Is it still a situation where they're trying hard to flip Sunterrain Perkins in Mississippi?
Yeah, that seemed like something that was inevitable to happen in July. But I think Ole Miss stepped in and shored things up with Sunterrain Perkins. So we'll see. I still think he'll probably take an official visit. Mississippi recruitments are always wild, as everybody that tracks Alabama recruiting knows. Mississippi recruitments always kind of go down to the wire. So even if, regardless of where they're committed. But Sunterrain Perkins is still a big target of that linebacker spot. Keeley, Russaw, obviously two guys we talked about that are still big targets at those edge spots. I'll be interested to see, if his name's totally blanking on me. The Miami commit,
Reuben Bain.
Raul Aguirre.
Oh, Aguirre too,
yeah.
I know Reuben Bain on D-line, but he's not committed, but yeah.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see if, they stay in the mix for Raul Aguirre. Out of Georgia. He was a guy that was on the verge of committing to Bama and then kind of in that momentum.
Malik Bryant did the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some options, but again, the guys they have, I think Bama's thrilled with guys like Yanze Pierre, Justin Jefferson. Those two guys have been crushing it so far this season, and I think they're more than happy to have those guys on board, but still some work to do at the linebacker spot overall.
I had this class because we know they can oversign to 25. I've been thinking the magic number was somewhere around 28 or 29. I know you already mentioned in our conversation about projecting the class. What as you and Tim Watts and those guys that track Alabama recruiting every day, what are you guys? What number are you kind of honing in on? Is it still kind of to be determined, or is there a pretty good idea of where things stand?
Yeah, I still think it's to be determined. I think if anything, I think Bama and any school really recognizes the fact that they have a lot of flexibility. So I think in a typical year, if you're at 21 commitments, you're thinking, there's only so many more spots you can take. But with this cap lifted, with it, really relying on or dependent upon the 85 number now, I think, you're kind of pretty much free to keep recruiting a lot of guys pretty hard. So, to be determined, I think it's going to be closer to 30. Like you said, 28, 29, you factor in the transfer portal as well. Guys are going to be leaving, I'm sure, and they're going to have guys that they probably like and want to bring in as transfers too, just like they did the last couple of cycles. So, I think it'll be closer to 30. I think you kind of have to factor in bigger classes each year now that, guys have such flexibility and freedom to if they want to make a move, they can just transfer, they can go somewhere else. So you kind of have to, look out for yourself and make sure that, you're looking at all your options. So probably closer to 30, I'd say. And I think that was, I need to pull it up, but I think that was the number with transfers last year. So probably safe estimate again this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And Hank, as we spend the last few minutes with you, this is Hank South, recruiting reporter for Bama Online 24/7. We'd be remiss if we didn't touch on basketball. Davin Cosby from Word of God in Raleigh, North Carolina, visited this past weekend officially. Alabama recently added R.J. Johnson from Grissom High School. Also, recently, a few months ago, got Sam Walters, who seems to be blowing up and may end up being a top 50 prospect in this class. Where does Alabama basketball recruiting stand right now with Nate Oates and staff?
Yeah, they seem to be picking things up. Momentum seems to be picking up pretty good. Like you said, R.J. Johnson, 2 commitments in the last 3 months. And Sam Walters seems like he's like a surefire, top 50 kid when it's all said and done with the way he's been playing, or at least on the AAU circuit, the way he was playing this summer. But, Davin Cosby this weekend took his official visit. said we caught up with him on Sunday or Monday. He said great things about the trip. He obviously spent a lot of time with Nate Oates. Antoine Petway, his recruiter, went to the football game, talked with Nick Saban. So did the whole thing, was hosted by Brandon Miller. So I think Bama's in his probably top 3. I think UVA, Wake Forest are 2 other schools that he's looking at really closely. He'll make a decision, I think, probably in late October. So Bama will stay involved there. They had Dink Pate on campus as well. He's a 2024 recruit. Probably will end up being a 5-star when all is said and done, but seems to really have blown it out of the water with him. And again, he's 2024. He has. I talked to him last night, and he mentioned at least 10 schools that he said were recruiting him the hardest. So I don't think he's anywhere close to narrowing things down. But he did say Bama will get an official visit, and they're recruiting him as a point guard. He's 6'8", and they want him as a point guard. So he loves that, and I think that's helping Bama for him. There's going to be some more official visits this fall, probably in the upcoming weeks. I think September 17th, and the week after that, there's a couple on the schedule. So it's definitely picking up. Momentum's kind of starting to go that way, and it makes sense. Obviously, the basketball signing period's in November, or the early signing period for them. So this is usually the time of the year when we start to see, the class, at least, the first part come together, and then usually there's always some spring buzz with the transfer portal after the season. Yeah,
there is, no doubt. And finally, Hank, you bring a unique perspective to this because you do a great job covering Alabama recruiting. It's your full-time job. You've done it for many years. But you also graduated from the University of Texas. So what is Alabama in for on Saturday in this environment? We haven't seen them play Texas in Austin in many, many moons. The last time they played was 2009 in the Rose Bowl. Your thoughts on what Alabama's facing on Saturday?
Yeah, it's going to be loud. It's going to be hot. I just don't think this Texas team, I think Texas is moving in the right direction under Sarkisian. I think they're recruiting really well.
Right.
I think they've got the pieces in place, but I just don't think they're ready for. I don't think they're at the level of beating Alabama at this point. I actually think I was talking to some of my friends about this the other day. I actually don't think it's going to be close. I think this Bama team might be one of the best ever that Saban's had. I think Texas has good players, but I just don't think it's all built together. They have offensive line question marks. They're playing a lot of young guys on the offensive line. I think Will Anderson and Dallas Turner are probably going to have a field day on Quinn Ewers. But they've got some really good skill players. Bijan Robinson's probably one of the best backs in the country. They've got some good wideouts, but they also were hampered by injuries in the preseason. They lost Isaiah Nair, who was a grad transfer wide receiver that was a stud. Junior Angulau was one of their veterans on the offensive line. So, the defense has played better. The offense is getting there. Obviously, Quinn Ewers brings a lot of buzz from his recruiting process. But I just think overall, while they might keep it close just with the atmosphere and the intent and the heat and everything, early, I think Bama's probably going to eventually walk away, with a double-digit win in this game. But I'm really excited to see it. Obviously as a Texas grad, I've always wondered what this was going to be like when I was watching the school I went to and Alabama play eventually, and now it's finally here. So I'm excited to see it happen, and I think it'll be a fun Saturday game for sure.
Well, we appreciate your time and extended conversation, updating us on Alabama recruiting, kind of tracking this basketball class and, of course, football and this number one class that they have in 24/7 sports. But let everybody know how to follow your work and, of course, you guys' coverage of this Alabama-Texas matchup on Bama Online.
Yeah, absolutely. BamaOnline.com. We just had a promo, I think, in yesterday for an annual subscription discount, but there's always, I think it's always $1 for your first month if you want to try it out. So good time to join. Obviously, we're going to have guys in Austin this weekend covering the game. Plenty of recruiting buzz happening. Like we mentioned, we talked about Jordan Renaud and Jalen Hill. I might be going to that Longview Tyler Legacy game on Friday.
There you go.
Covered there as well. And then my Twitter handle is @HankSouth247.
Well, we look forward to hopefully seeing some of that coverage. I envy you. I'd like to see that game. I'd like to see Jordan Renaud and Jalen Hill up close. But thank you, Hank. You do a great job, and we appreciate the conversation. We'll talk again soon. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks, Drew.
That's Hank South. We're going to go on a break and wrap up this edition of the Recruiting Blitz shortly on Blitz Sports Radio with D Squared.
The Blitz has been called.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.
A wise man once said, If you take care of old folks and children, everything in the middle will take care of itself.
Hi, I'm Danny Aldridge, lawyer in Alabama and Tennessee. In the next 20 years, the number of those folks over 65 years of age will more than double. In our golden years, the most important goal is to be treated with dignity and have control over doing what makes you grateful with those you love. At the Aldridge Law Firm and the Legal Town Center, we're dedicated to help you with these goals, and we'll be there when life throws you those inevitable curveballs. Let us assist you with your legal needs, whatever they may be or become. You may reach us by phone at 256-534-3188 or online with Dan at danaldridgelaw.com. Just remember, we're here to help. Whether it's personal injury, wrongful death, fraud and cheat, or estate planning made complete, we're here to help.
Here's Bobby White from Woody Anderson Ford on their service department.
President's Award winner 2 years in a row. That's only given to the top 10% of Ford dealers in customer satisfaction. So we're very proud of the service department. And our body shop. If you happen to get into an accident, which not a lot of people just want to go down and see a body shop, but if you get into an accident, award-winning body shop. We have state-of-the-art paint booths back there. They're waterborne paints that we use, friendly for the environment. We've got our production system, the way things are in and out. We have the fastest cycle rate in town of getting your vehicle in, getting your vehicle out, and assured that it's fixed right. We take pictures before it's wrecked, and not only after, but we take it as we're putting the parts on. All done to above industry standards. So I'm proud of our body shop too. Don't forget our parts department. So if you have to need parts, performance parts, or just parts if you're a weekend mechanic.
Woody Anderson Ford, located at the corner of Jordan and Sparkman, as well as Hughes Road and Madison. You can also check out the great deals at woodyAndersonFord.com.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding the solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
Any Jane Doe can tell you that Geico could help you save. But since money talks, we just ask the savings instead.
Greetings and sun salutations. I'm Jane's Money, and I never knew my self-worth until Jane switched her car insurance at Geico.com. Those 15 minutes built me up to real savings. Geico's been helping customers save money like me for over 75 years. So take that to the bank. And namaste.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Welcome back. Final segment of the Blitz, Recruiting Blitz with D Squared on Blitz Sports Radio. And don't forget the Blitz later today from 2 to 4 with the Bandyman, Bailey Lowry, the Captain Cool, John Abraham, and Smokey Mike Concho. They will bring you some quality sports talk 2 to 4 each Monday through Friday, and they will be on the Blitz. Just be sure to tune in for that show. They featured Charlie Potter of BamaOnline.com yesterday, and they'll have some more quality sports talk later today. And just be sure each morning from 9 to 10 a.m. To not miss the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. I'm Drew DeArmond. We just had a great conversation with Hank South of BamaOnline.com 24/7, talking Crimson Tide recruiting, talking football, talking basketball. Hank giving us his thoughts on his alma mater, Texas, hosting Alabama. Doesn't think it's going to be close, and he may end up at that Longview Tyler Legacy game with 2 Alabama targets in it. Jalen Hale coming off his official visit, the wide receiver, and Jordan Renaud, who officially visited in June and could be back for an unofficial. It may be committed to Alabama potentially. He's going to officially visit, I think, Oklahoma this weekend, but he will, he's going to visit the Crimson Tide coming up for that Texas A&M weekend, and potentially could Jordan Renaud be a part of the class. He's an underrated player in my opinion. But it's been another great Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and download us on the app on the Google Store or Apple Store. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking more recruiting from 9 to 10 a.m. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and remember to tune into the Blitz tonight or this afternoon from 2 to 4. Have a great rest of the day. I'm D Squared Rudy Armin, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning.
This is Wes Neighbors with Phillip with Eagle Insulation, and we have an announcement.
NyQuil Severe gives you powerful relief from your worst cold and flu.